Hey guys, so for those of you who don't, for we're doing something a little different, as you can see. I've been wanting to talk about my testimony for some time, and so I'm gonna kind of I'm gonna talk about it today. I just kind of feel like this is what the Lord wants me to do, so it's pretty late. Well, not super late, but late for me, anyways. Uh, Obviously, for those of you who don't know, I also run a channel called Mystery Gaming, obviously. I've been running that channel for gonna be 5 years in June, on the 20th, ironically. Um, and, well, I have always expressed my faith between not only this channel but the gaming channel as well. And I've never really ex- fully explained my entire faith to you guys, and so I feel like just so you guys kind of know and understand pretty much who Mystery is and how Mystery became who he is today, pretty much. So here it is. When I was a kid, uh, I when I was growing up, I was about 5 years old, and I will say, just kind of viewer discretion. This is going to be a little bit sensitive for some people. Uh, I'm going to say, I was taken advantage of at a young age by another male, and you know, during that time, of course, his view on it was, he loved me so much that he had no other way of expressing it, so he did what he did. And understand this, this was a long time ago, and since then I forgave said person. Okay, so I don't want you know uh, the bad stuff on this. Um, but anyways, after that happened, I was in preschool, obviously at the time. Um, I met this young woman. Her name was, I'm gonna say Jane because I'm not gonna expose her real name, just for her own safety, of course. Uh, Jane and I were really good friends growing up. We played house together. I played with my monster truck toys, and she played with her Barbies, or we'd have we do we practically did everything together, really, uh, or at least almost everything together. We did, like, I think I think we did some trick or treating together, but my memory doesn't go that far back. Uh, as as good as it used to be, I should say. But during preschool was probably this was just before the special needs program became into existence. Actually, really, um, which will be I'm also going to be getting into. So I got bullied a lot. I got bullied by my teachers a lot. Specifically this one during preschool. My sister. I remember this incident with my sister. She made me a balloon. A balloon. I think it was a balloon. Uh, Animal, a balloon animal. She made me, I think it was a dog, if I remember correctly, or it was a sword. I can't remember which one it was, but I think it was mostly a dog. This, and the teacher that I had popped it right in my hand, and my sister obviously remembers this, obviously, and she saw that I was crying, and she ended up having to make me another balloon because of it, and after that whole thing, that whole ordeal, um, you know, Jane obviously moved away, and from us, because we were neighbors at the time, and then it's 2001. That was the year that I moved away. This was 2001 or 2000. It was just before. Yeah, no, okay. Yeah, this was just before I went into elementary school. Um, then we essentially moved from, we obviously moved away essentially after, um, probably a few months after Jane did, if memory serves me right. I could be wrong. Um, then elementary school came along, and I got obviously bullied a lot in school, in elementary school, for being special needs, and this was during the time that the special needs program became into existence, really. And to clarify my quote unquote, I'm gonna put that in air quotes because my supposed disability is a cognitive learning disability. So I had some trouble reading and writing, and math obviously was the kicker, obviously, as well. And I had three friends. I had only like three friends that were in 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 elementary school that I had the entire time, and it was three girls, by the way. Ironic. Uh, um, I'm gonna not say their names just for obvious reasons. Um, I got bullied for what I wore, got bullied for, how I smelt. You name it. I was bullied for all of it, really. And you know, it was already hard enough because, I was uh, by the time I turned 9 or 10, I was having to deal with changes, which was watching my parents get divorced, which, being a kid, you know, you blame yourself a little bit. Obviously, being adult now, I know that obviously it wasn't my fault. Divorces happen, and it's not in God's will for divorces to happen, but they do happen, unfortunately and sadly. So I had to, grow up with my youngest. I had to grow up with my youngest sister, out of my three sisters. So the youngest one I got the closest to, and then I had my first girlfriend. I remember her very well, and I was still in elementary school, by the way, when her and I started dating. She was in middle school, so that says something in itself. I then was a part of Boys and Girls Club, because I didn't really have friends or have things to do outside of school, obviously. So my mom pretty much forced me to do that, and then I met two of my best buddies. One of them we'll get into further details about. But these two guys they were brothers, by the way. They were twin brothers, and they were like my big brothers to me, and they were there to guide me, and they supported me with literally everything. Like, I could just talk to them about how my day was at school, and they would just be like, hey, it's no big deal. That happened to us going to school. It's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. Essentially, what ended up happening is probably about. I also probably about. This was about the time. Insert my dog Buddy. Buddy was my dog that I had, and sorry, I get a little emotional talking about him every time. So, Buddy was a puppy, and at this time, me and my sister were both arguing about what to name him. I wanted to name him Shadow. Ironic, right? But we both kind of were like, you know what? He kind of seems like a buddy more than a shadow, But the main reason behind why I wanted to call him Shadow is because he used to follow people in their shadows all the time. It was all the time. Then my mom met my stepdad. Well, I should say was stepdad at the time. Obviously, they just started dating at this time, and I didn't really know who he was or whatever. This was also the time that my dad was also dating was stepmom at the time. And so I had these two new people in my life that I had zero clue or no idea who they were, what they were about, or anything like this. I was about a teenage, I was, 12 or 13 at the time in middle school, but about this time around, about to go into middle school around this time, or already well, actually no, I already was in middle school about this time, and obviously I wasn't dating obviously I wasn't dating the girl that I was dating in elementary school by that time. We just kind of had this on and off relationship of dating and then not dating, and then not dating again, and uh, yeah. And then yeah, middle school was, I was a pretty decent student. I did track and field for the first time uh, there in middle school, and I was on the track field team, so it was like everybody knew who I was, and everybody was like, "Yeah, that's cool." Uh, this is where I got in a little trouble. I'll admit. I skipped school quite a lot, but it was for the fact that I was being bullied a lot, and you know, my middle school wasn't really doing anything about it, really, at all. I would tell teachers about it. I did what any student would do. I tried to voice it out and say, hey, I'm getting bullied pretty much, and nothing's happening. You know, Obviously during this time I was in, I'm gonna say what us adults call therapy, anger management therapy to be exact. Uh, and this was to pretty much help me and other people who had special needs with their anger issues, or if they had any anger issues, or just issues in general, with their you know their I'm gonna say their special needs. And I voiced that to to this to this I might as well say therapist, because that's the best word I can use to explain that. Pretty much, that's kind of how I feel about it now as an adult. Is he was more of a therapist than he was trying to help. But he was a cool dude. It got to the point to where I wasn't needed. I didn't need those classes anymore. I didn't need those sessions with him anymore, and essentially, I met my girlfriend at the time. Well, was girlfriend at the time. Uh, she was the sweetest girl, and I dated her until practically till the 8th grade. Well, actually, no, till about almost till I was a freshman in high school. But we had this other person, I'm gonna say her ex, got involved with her and I's relationship, and pretty much broke things off for us both. And this was probably the first time I I remember spending probably months and weeks just crying because that's how much I loved her. And this was the first time, or I think was the first time that I think I saw an angel, or something that looked like an angel, because I remember very vaguely, very like I remember this much, that I remember this. I couldn't exactly see a face, but it was just this figure of light. Just anytime I was like doing exercises or something to keep in shape, obviously, because I was also in track and field in freshman high. When I was a freshman in high school as well. And I remember very vaguely this just beam of light, just like anytime I was like, it was always sunny when this I'm gonna say angel uh, would show itself, is like during the day. It was always during the day. So it was like I'd see this, you know, silhouette of light, like really bright light. Like it was brighter than the it was like brighter than the sun, pretty much. The best to explain that. So I could see it, but I could not see like the facial features, And this was probably after that. This was I met my buddy, one of my closest friends, uh, that I used to be really close to. Um, about this time, we no longer had Buddy. We still had we we didn't have Buddy anymore at this time. Uh, well, actually, no, we still had him. It, we still had Buddy at this time. This time he was, obviously a little bit older, and he's about a teenager now. Uh, and this is where my niece comes into the picture. This is where I first got to hold my niece, and my niece was born pretty much when I was a freshman in high school, and so I had to help my sister take care of my niece, and obviously I was no longer dating the girl I was dating in middle school anymore, or after, obviously, I already said that. Um, this was after the second move, because we moved from one place to a different place, called Markazan. It's a small town, practically. You'd have to look it up pretty much on Google. That's pretty much where I moved to, and that's where I went to high school for a little bit. And I remember there just being the new guy. I was just like, nobody really knew me. other than my two friends I had, and well, one of them I wasn't really friends. Well, I won't say weren't friends, but we weren't like actually friends. Like there were some things that we agreed with, and there were some things that we didn't agree with. And then there were some things that, you know, along the lines, like just did stuff that just wasn't okay. Okay. Uh, but you know, we hung out and all this other stuff, and same thing for my other buddy. We would just hang out, and you know, we'd just walk or go to his grandma's because his grandma was alive, and we'd just hang out at his grandma's, and we'd just his grandma's house was haunted, by the way, so it was like super duper weird to have to deal with that. Uh, and you know, obviously still got bullied, obviously, because, you know, being the new guy and whatnot. Uh, and then we moved again. I know, there's quite a pattern of me moving right now. Uh, we were only there in Marquezan for about 2 years, so I was there for the rest of my year of middle school, and then the rest of my year, my freshman year there, uh, because it was a middle school and a high school together, pretty much, to to put the puzzles together, pretty much. And so we were there for a bit. Um, just so you guys know, this was after I moved from. So the order I'm going in is I used to live in Madison. I'm not gonna say where, but Madison. And then I went from Madison to Fond du Lac, Fond du Lac to Marquezan, and then we moved again. So this was about number 4. This is about the 4th move now to Berlin, not Germany. Okay, just to make that clear, not Germany. Then I was there for my sophomore year, did obviously track and field there as well, and I met these quite a few people. I met these 3 individuals that I think at least one of them was a girl, and you know, I feel honestly, I kind of feel sorry for her still to this day. Uh, her and I got really close. Not like you know, not romantically close, but you know, we were close enough that like I had feelings for her, and I expressed those feelings to her, and she still had feelings for her ex, who also went to school with me. And this was the guy. This was the guy that really stood out to me. This guy used to, or I should say, I don't know if he still does, but he used to he had contracts to pretty much sell your soul, pretty much, to him, specifically. And obviously I obviously didn't sign any contract with him or anything. He would ask me every time. He'd ask me, and I'd just be like, "No, I'm good. I'm good. I'll pass. I like having my soul." You know, this was before before I even really, I should say, I believed in Jesus, to make that clear. And you know, the minute he asked me if I wanted to sign my soul to him, or, you know, sign a contract to give him my soul, I was like, no, some feels off. I'm gonna say no. Ironically enough, this other guy, his nickname was Jesus, and like, I could talk to him about literally anything, and he'd just come up with the wisest, most kindest thing ever, and I'd just be like, yeah, that sounds like something Jesus would say. I think that was the Lord at that time being like, hey, wake up. now that I look back at it. But yeah, I'm not gonna lie, guys. I had a few crushes in middle school. I mean, so when I was a sophomore in high school, I had a crush on like 3 girls. Okay, I had a crush on the girl that we just talked about. I had a crush on another girl. Well, actually, no. It was the first girl. I was like trying to like just get to know her and talk to her, you know, and like I just felt drawn to her. I don't know why, I just did, but after a while, I just, you know, I just gave up on her, and then I went for the girl that we just talked about, and then the third girl, she was actually my prom date. Yeah, your boy went to prom. With a senior. We went together, and we danced a little bit. We didn't do anything. You know, she had a kid on the way. And you know, she had a partner in her life. So you know, I stood, you know, I kind of, you know, pushed myself out of the situation, you know. But at the end of the day, she was so kind. She really just got to know me. She didn't care about what video games I played. She didn't care what, you know, she just cared about who I was. And, you know, essentially this was when my stepdad at the time, they're not me, my mom and my stepdad, was stepdad at that time. They obviously got married, you know, when I was in middle school. and obviously, they're still married by this time around. Uh, and This was where I had to make a choice. Obviously, I just started seeing my dad more at this point, and his, my, I should say, my now stepmom, or I should say, was before she became my stepmom. She was just my dad's friend at the time, and he lived with her and whatnot. I would see him quite often, and this is where I decided to date my stepmom's daughter. Her and I's relationship was intimate, but not to the point to where we, got to the sexual stuff. Well, I should say we got to the sexual stuff, but I never really went in, if you know, you know. I'm not going to say it, but if you know, you know. But that's pretty much what she wanted me for, was that. And because I didn't give it to her, she found means to do it with two people in my dad's life that I knew. Sadly, this first individual, his name, I won't say, but I will say this, that he sadly passed away because of what he did. So pretty much he ended up going to jail and pretty much dying. Ended up getting killed in jail, pretty much, for what he did to her, even though she was the one that forced it upon them too. And the other individual just wanted nothing to do with her, pretty much. And essentially, obviously, I cried about it, and I didn't know what to do about it. And before I started dating her, I was dating this person that I'd known for 3 years. I knew this person for 3 years online. We talked every day. Every day. For the last 3 years. And I didn't know she had feelings for me at all, and my buddy, this was my buddy from Marquezan, told me, he's like, yeah, she has feelings for you, dude. Why haven't you asked her out yet? And it's like, I was a complete shock, because I was like, I've been talking to this girl, and I don't know what it was, but it was like, I felt like I was unworthy of dating her. I just felt like I didn't didn't deserve her, really, because she was like so amazing. Like, she was beautiful, she was smart, she was kind. Like, it was like almost a date. It was like a dream come true almost. I was like, is this really happening? But sadly, she broke up with me because of the distance, which I completely understand, and she knows who she is, and you know, I still think about her sometimes. You know, I hope she's doing well, at least. And well, obviously, I also dated the same girl I dated in elementary school for a little bit in Marquezan. Uh, Sorry, kind of going a little backwards. But that was the last time that her and I dated. Because, like, she just kept on bringing stuff up from the past, and it was just like, it got old, you know? When you've, like, had this conversation multiple times with somebody and you're like, okay, this is enough. I've had enough of this. I don't want this anymore. Bye. That was my feeling with her, and like I told her straight up, I was just like, you know what, like, you can't move on from the past. I can't date you because you're telling me stuff that I used to do way back in the day, when we were young, and applying it to the stuff that we are doing now, and it's like, no, I'm not that kid anymore. I'm almost a, almost a, you know, legally adult at this point. I was 14 or 15, and when me and my was stepmom's daughter started dating, I was 15, gonna be 16 at this point. And actually, no, I just turned 16 at that point. And obviously, my stepdad at the time was snooping around with another woman, and well, my mom found out, and my mom was just like, you know what? You can either work this out, or I'm packing my bags with the kid, aka yours truly, and leaving you. And that's exactly what she did. And essentially, for a little bit, I lived in Wolf Pond with my mom. This was the last time I moved with my mom, just to make that clear. Obviously, the third girl that I mentioned from Berlin, she reached out to my mom, believe it or not, and wanted to know if I wanted to go fishing with her, and I was like, well, yeah, I would love to if I was still living with you, but by then I was living with my dad. I was 16 and I, but when you're 16 and you have, when your case, I'm going to say case, when it comes to divorces, when your kid becomes 16, they have the legal right to either stay with their mother or their father if they're, split. And I decided to, see how it would go living with my dad. This was where my dad's friend and him were living together, and we lived there for actually quite a bit. We were there till I first moved in, and I packed up, unpacked all my things and whatnot, and the first thing she did was buy me new clothes. I was so overjoyed that somebody wanted to buy me clothes. She spent $1,000 just on your boy for clothes. What kind of person does that? She did. She really did. She bought me new shirts, she bought me new pants, you name it. She did it. She bought me literally everything I needed so I wouldn't get picked on at school. And I just cried. I cried my eyes out. And my dad was just like, you okay, kiddo? Because that's his name. That's my nickname for my dad. I'm his kiddo instead of hi son. He was just like, hey kiddo, you good? I was like, I was still crying. I was like, yeah, I just didn't expect her to buy me all this clothes, and for all these clothes to actually fit me and not feel like I'm gonna get bullied now. Which didn't happen at all. At all. Then I turned then I was a junior in high school, and this was I just turned 17. Okay. Well, actually, I was 16 at the time, and I just got diagnosed with cancer at that time. This was about after the fact that I spent about a solid 3 months in the hospital. I didn't get out of the hospital until about pretty much Thanksgiving. I know, quite a coincidence, right? But for the first 2 months, it felt like I was gonna die. I really did. I felt like I was gonna die. I really did. I really, really did. I was like, oh great, I'm gonna die right here in this hospital in front of my father that I just finally got to actually begin having an actual relationship with. And obviously my dad was in the picture still, even during my younger years too. Okay, he wasn't a bad dad. He was there. When he needed to be there. And, once we got the news that it was cancer, it was like, it's like, oh, great. How long do I live? How am I gonna, uh, but yeah, pretty much, right away, I had the best doctors. I had the best doctors in the in in the city between the city that I lived in at that time and and in and where I live now. I had the best doctors taking care of me. And my dad being, you know, a frequent, used to drive taxi in the city that I live in, remembered this gentleman from all those years ago, that this gentleman that was helping me get better was the same person that he used to pick up from the university. So that's kind of a wild story, eh? This was kind of where I was like really, really questioning where, if I was gonna die or not, or what was gonna happen to me, because like I believed in Jesus. I wholeheartedly do, and I was just like, all right, if this is my time, this is my time. I got my business. I got business to do. I got things to say. Pretty much this cancer. For those of you who might not know what this cancer is, this was a form of childhood cancer, a very rare kind of childhood cancer called histiocytosis, Langerhans cell histiocytosis, or Langerhans cell histiocytosis. I just said that twice now. But there's a shorter version of it, but that's pretty much what that is. And pretty much what that is it's a type of blood cancer, pretty much, and it forms up in the body using blood cells. You're using your white blood cells pretty much against you to create a tumor, which it did in my T10 to T12 vertebrae. And pretty much the doctor I had for my spine specifically pretty much told me that if I would have just moved one piece of furniture, heavy furniture, I'd have been done for. I would have been in a wheelchair permanently from the waist down. I would have had no way of being able to walk or take care of myself. And yeah, chemo. I lost all my hair. I lost all of it. I was bald. I was a bald boy. I didn't lose all of it, but I pretty much lost all of it. I had like very bits and pieces of hair, but not a lot of it. and going through these chemos. This was during the time that the Ebola happened. The Ebola virus happened to be around, and well, obviously couldn't catch that because having a already weakened immune system, you're kind of screwed if you get even a cold. So for my for my entire junior year, I was in and out of a hospital for a solid year. Obviously we paid visits. We had appointments to go to and all that, and this was around the time I was dating this young woman that I met online, and she was sweet, and we kind of broke things off later down the line because it just was evident that she was far more concerned about if the cancer came back or not, because after finally going through my last chemotherapy session for the last time, all my teachers were telling me, and I mean literally all my teachers, every single one of them was like, just drop out, you can come back when you're better. And I was like, no, I'm going to stick this out, and fight this sickness to prove you guys wrong, to prove you all wrong. And I did. And it was on Veterans Day that I became completely cancer-free. That day exact, and I remember one of my teachers I had, that was like, she was so sweet. Like, she was like the sweetest and kindest person ever. She would always check up on me and just be like, hey Travis. She'd be like, hey, how are you doing? And I remember her just being like, she'd be like, hey, you need anything? You need water? You need something to snack on, because of the chemo makes you hungry sometimes. So I was like, no, I'm good. I'll survive, and after a while, I look back at her, and it's just like, she was the only teacher that was like, you can do this, I'm cheering for you. And I owe it honestly to all to her, because it's like, she knew my fight, she knew what I was going through. And it's not every day that you get to look at a student and be like, wow, that student there, not only did he get honor roll, yeah, because I got honor roll when I graduated high school. I got high honor rolls for school for my senior year in high school. And obviously I was dating somebody else at this time, and we boy, that was a doozies. That one was fun. And when I mean fun, she was kind of abusive, sadly, uh, to me, you know. But it is what it is. And well, you know, uh, it came to a point to where it was like, you know, I was that guy that was like, too bad they didn't have me say anything because I was like, man, you know what? Uh, all I had to say, literally all I had to say was, you know, it's kind of funny how some people just tell you that you can't do something when you're sick, when you had cancer, and they tell you to drop out and get better But you know what? I became cancer free, and you know what? I only had one teacher rooting me on to these final days of my cancer treatment, rooting me on to be strong, to 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 be better, to be better than the people that are there, to do better than some. And I that's all I would have had to say, and I would have just walked off with my diploma, high school diploma, and just left like Elvis in style. And yeah, after that, after high school, you know, obviously we lived with my dad's friend at the time still, and we obviously moved. Well, she moved, and me and my dad moved in with my grandparents. And well, this is where we get into the funner stuff. Well, my buddy from all those years of doing Boys and Girls Club, at least his brother anyway, he sadly passed away. He died. He got killed by some random guy. And I remember my sister telling me that, and yeah, he died. And if you're wondering where Buddy went at this point, well, Buddy was no longer in the picture. He didn't die or anything. Sadly, my mom and my stepdad couldn't afford to keep him, so we had to not get rid of him, but we had to pretty much have the daycare center that we had them at pretty much put them up for adoption for us. And it really broke my heart because Buddy was my dog, man. Like, and at this point, he was probably like an old man now, and it's like I wanted to. I was just hoping to be able to have him, so I had a friend, to share these moments with, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. Obviously we had another dog named Jack, but Jack went with my stepdad, so I didn't get him. And about the same year. This was about the same year that we got the news that my grandmother, eventually got sick. So, to explain her story, my grandmother, after over 20 years, I was about pretty much 20 years old, could be 20, well, actually no, I was 18 or 19, so it was about 19 years since she became cancer-free. She became cancer-free the year I was born, pretty much. And her cancer came back, but unfortunately it was not the cancer. She unfortunately wasn't a cancer that came back. It was a cancer that was still there. And I guess apparently the doctor she had, she just didn't like this doctor at all, whatsoever. And we found out she ended up having the cancer that she had, which was breast cancer, essentially turned into bone cancer. Yeah. And this is where one day I was in town with my dad, obviously looking for work at this point, because, being a high school graduate, you want to try and get some. This was after my first time after college, because I went to college for game art design at first for a while, and then I dropped out. Then I was looking for work in town with my dad, and well, my dad was working and I was just looking for work, so it wasn't like I wasn't doing anything, I was looking for work. So I would just walk all the way from pretty much one side of the block all the way to the Capitol and back. And then I would just, type up these, use my resume, whatever, used up my resume, typed up whatever, emails I needed to, or cover letters I needed to write, and I would, send those emails or resumes out to people, to those people. And I had to take care. Me and my grandfather had to take care of her while my father was gone, obviously, and him and I would also take care of her as well, and I was eventually hospice got involved, and I tried to explain to my grandfather and to my dad. I was like, well, we can't, we can't take care of her all the time. Grandpa's old, and I looked at him and I was like, no offense, but you are. and you and I can do it together, but you and I are both not very strong, like Dad, and like, we can have them come, just, help take care of her, while, you know, uh, here in the house. Because, it was my grandmother's wishes to pass away in the house. And obviously for her funeral, she wanted my second oldest sister to be at her funeral. And so my grandmother eventually passed away on a night that I happened to need to use the bathroom a little earlier than I normally would. And it was just before my dad had to wake up. Was about to wake up too, and I remember just going down to use the restroom, and all I just hear is nothing but air. Just nothing but air. Because she had some, those things that help you, those oxygen tanks that help you, like, breathe, that help you keep you comfortable, that's what she had on her, and all I could hear was the air, because I was like, because all I just, I kind of was like, morning, Grandma, just to kind of be like, make sure she was, still with us. And I used the bathroom, and I was like, it's like, I looked at her, and over her, and I just I was like, Grandma, you need anything? Yeah, and I went upstairs, and I said, Dad, I think Grandma's gone. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, when I went downstairs to use the bathroom, all I heard was the oxygen tank. I didn't hear her breathing, because I asked her if she needed anything while I was downstairs to use the bathroom, in case she needed to, in case she needed her bag emptied out, in case it was already full, because they put like had something in her to help her, pee, and so we had to wake my grandfather up really early in the morning, and I was like, hey, Grandpa, I think Grandma's gone, because I told him the same thing I told my dad, and I was like, I'm sorry for waking you up early, but we are gonna find her. You and I were gonna find out eventually, either way, with Dad or not. And he's like, and I remember him just being like, don't be sorry, don't be, like, your grandma wanted to go out with neither one of us being awake. She wanted to go in peace without causing too much of a fuss. And I was like, well, that doesn't make this doesn't make me feel any better. My grandma's dead. So we had to call up, the hospice, and just be like, hey, you know, uh, my grandma died, and so then the funeral came along. Of course, I had to take some time off from work because I finally landed a job by about that time. And you know, uh it was really hard on my grandpa because, I did exactly what my grandma wished. I said I reached out to my second oldest sister and I said, hey, grandma passed away and she wanted me to reach out to you and only you, that she wanted you to be at her funeral. Long and behold, she ended up telling my mother and my other two sisters, and obviously, word got around, being a small town, that my grandmother passed away, and my grandfather's friend happened to be there, and he kind of asked me if I was looking for work, and I was like, no, I have a job. And he's like, how about a car? And I was like, well, no, right now's not the time to be talking about a vehicle right now. My grandma just passed away. My grandma just passed away. I don't think this is very appropriate to talk about this right now. After that, he pretty much didn't help my grandfather out whatsoever, and so we had to really rely on one of our other one of his other neighbors, great guy, by the way, who was very helpful to my grandfather and I, and like, me and my grandfather, we got into it sometimes, not out of, sometimes out of anger, and sometimes I think most of it was because we both were grieving, and we would just talk. We'd just talk about whatever, including what things about his times with my grandmother, or his time in the service. It was mostly his time in the service, but it was also mostly also about my grandmother, and the stuff that they used to do, and all this other stuff. And me and my grandfather got close. We got really close, and then we essentially, there was one day me and my dad were both at work, and we couldn't make it home because I had to go back into work in the morning. And we called him up, and we were like, hey, Grandpa, we're not going to be making it home. I said, I'm sorry, but I do have to work in the morning, and it just makes no sense for us to come all the way back home just for us to come, just to, we don't want to be wasting gas, to go all the way back home, come all the way back home, and be having to come back into work in the morning. Long behold, he was also getting help at this time as well. So we were no longer, at this point, we were practically living with my dad's friend and her roommate at the time. And so, essentially, what ended up happening is, from what we can gather, we still don't know to this day of how or what happened. From what we assume is that he got up for breakfast like he normally does. You know, unlocks the door, you know, stuff like that, because he knew that, you know, somebody was coming to, you know, help him take care of, you know, laundry, take care of him, you know, stuff like that. But what we didn't know is that the nurse that was supposed to be taking care of him decided to take a hiatus, aka vacation, for a week. And from what we can gather is that he was on the ground for a whole week. From what we can gather is he slipped and fell, maybe, onto the chair, one of the chairs. And then the nurse happened to find him on the floor. And, well, me and my dad we were both furious with this nurse, okay? We were both like, what incarnation are you doing? You're supposed to be taking care of this person. You're supposed to be taking care of my grandfather. Like, what the heck? Why didn't you, like, say anything to us? Or get somebody to, like, come out and help him, you know, during that week? You know? Like, what the heck, man? You didn't say anything to us. You didn't get somebody out here. And, you know, me and my dad both say that, you know, both said it that, you know, if we really wanted to, we could sue you. We could sue your company. Obviously, we didn't, but, you know, we could have. And we'd have had every right to, because they were responsible for taking care of my grandfather. And because, you know, they're supposed to be coming out and checking him every single day. You know, it was like, what the heck? Nobody said anything, nobody talked to us, nobody said anything. To us, at this point. And, yeah, we were there in the hospital, in the VA hospital, here in town, where I live. And we had to ask him a lot of questions, like, where does he want to get buried, and, you know, whether he wanted to go with my grandmother, or, you know, did he want to live. And, well, essentially it was like, it's my time. I want to go be with grandma. I miss her too much. I I need to go now. And I was like, all right. And he asked me to reach out to Rachel, and I was like, Grandpa, you know, she's gonna bring everybody else. Said I love you, but I'm not going to do that because I know she's gonna bring everyone else. And he's like, I know. You don't have to do that. And so he passed away there in the hospital, and you know, at this time I was single at this time. You're like, everybody's probably like, "Jeez, you dated a lot, Mystery." And yeah, it was I obviously had a crush on this girl at work that I worked with, and obviously, you know, things obviously didn't work. We didn't date or anything. I just had feelings for her pretty much, and yeah. Anyways, after he passed away, we, you know, obviously, you know, his funeral came around, and had to take off from work. This was a completely different place by then. I wasn't working in the same place. And I told them that, you know, told work I had to take off for my grandfather's funeral, and, you know, so on and so forth. But I did meet these two awesome ladies that were in my life while I was working with this crew that I had, and they were something else. They were just something else, and it's like they were just awesome. That's probably the best word I can say. They got along with me, I got along with them. They joked around with me, I joked around with them. I sort of flirted with them, they sort of flirted with me slightly. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we kept it professional. At the end of the day, we kept it professional, okay? And, at this point, once we had the funeral, obviously, at the funeral, same guy that came to my grandfather's funeral and asked the same question if I had a license or not, and he pretty much flat out told me that, you know, kind of made it sound like it was my fault that I didn't have a license, pretty much. That was my fault that I didn't have a license to go and check on my grandfather. And that's kind of where I put my foot down, and I had some not very nice words to say, but I'm gonna put them as this in a more kinder way. pretty much I said, sorry, but he had nurses taking care of him. I don't need to have a license to take care of somebody that's being taken care of already by nurses. And this is my grandfather we're talking about, a man who served for your country. Said, you have the gall to tell me right now that you're blaming me for this, because that's not okay. And I said it loud and clear for him and everyone to hear, okay? That I want nothing. I want you nowhere near my family ever again. Said, that man was your friend. That man there, that's sitting in that box now, in nothing but ashes now, was your friend. And I said, that man served your country. I will not let you dishonor my grandfather like that. I will not let you blame me for something that I didn't have no control over. Yes, I may not have a license, but regardless, that may have done very little to know, that would have done probably nothing. Really, it would have probably done nothing, because he would have still died, regardless of whether I had the license or not. I don't know that, but he would have still died eventually. He was 91 years old when he passed. The man was getting up there in years, and he wasn't able to do the things that he wanted to do most of the time. So he had to rely on other people to help him. Not all the time, because he can take a bathe himself and all this other stuff. But yeah, that man's dead now, and even my father, pretty much, even my father had to kind of hold me back, because I was like, I had to be like, Dad, you need to hold me back, because I'm 100% gonna punch this dude straight in the face if you don't. Because, my dad being in the military and also my grandfather being in the military, it's like, there are some things you should and shouldn't say at a funeral, and that was one of them. It felt very inappropriate, and I had to do what I felt was right to honor my grandfather in that moment, and just be like, hey, be the grown adult here, even though I'm practically adult by this time. About this point, I was 19 going on 20 at this point. And I was just like, no, this is inappropriate, man. Like, my grandpa just died, and the top of all of it, he had he got the soldiers salute, like every army, every person that serves in our, you know, for our country, who serves for our country does, that do pass away. And, uh, it was a rough day. It was a rough day for me and my father, because he passed away on a Monday. Yep, on a Monday. And that's kind of why me and my dad both don't like Mondays. We don't. And like when we explain to people that, he and I both have we have far worse days than any normal person does. Your Monday is just a Monday to us. Our Mondays are great. Today's another Monday. A day of remembering my grandfather. And at this point, I already also moved out of my grandfather's place. So pretty much I was living on my own at this point when he officially passed. Actually, no, he passed away before I started my second. Well, yeah, he passed away once a year, I think it was like the second year. Yeah, it was like my second year into the second job that I had. So I was about 18 or 19 at that point. Yeah, because I was 18 or 19 at that point. So, and I remember, it was just hard for the both of us, really. So, then then it was about then COVID hit, obviously. Actually, no, I met my was gonna be fiance just a year after he passed away. I met my was gonna be fiance we were both 21 at the time. Yeah, we were both 21. She was 21 and I was turning 22. Yeah, that sounds about right. And it was we were just madly in love with each other. Like I don't know what it was, but we just were. And like I was talking to my dad, and I was just like, Dad, I think she's the one. Obviously, I want her to meet you, and I want her to meet the family, and I want to meet her family, all this other stuff. Because she lived all the way in Brazil, and obviously, my dad was like, you sure she's not in it for the money, not trying to get a green card, which, I completely understand and get, because, you're just like, you're just not sure, because some, not saying all, but, some people are just in it for that. But I didn't feel that way about her, and I was like, no, I don't think she is. I don't, like I genuinely think I think she loves me, and it's like, all right, just be careful, because, last thing we want is you being like, hey dad, guess what, you're right. And well, I essentially I bought a ring, in her size. It wasn't a real one. It wasn't a real diamond, but it was the closest thing to a real diamond I could afford. You know, uh, and and I remember the day I was going to propose to her, because I was going to, and she wanted to talk to me, and well, I was like, yeah, I need to talk to you, and she's like, well, no, I found somebody else. I want to break up with you. And I was like, well, I bought this ring. Whatnot. And she's like, oh, you bought me a ring? You got me a ring? I was like, yeah, I was gonna propose to you. And she's like, oh, we can still do that. And I was like, nah. I was like, no, you found yourself another man, so if you found yourself another guy, I don't want to be in your way, and if you're happy with this guy, I don't want to be with you, So we broke up, and after that, after about 7 years of blaming myself, I blamed myself a lot for I felt like I might have treated her bad. I wasn't the greatest partner, but at that time, but I genuinely loved her, and I cared for her, and I wanted what was best for her. And then yeah, I blamed her. I blamed myself for 7 years, and I was just like so upset with myself, and so angry with myself and the world, and obviously this was all during COVID, or pretty much when, like, we got the vaccine for COVID, the COVID-19 vaccine. And times were tough. I ended up being unemployed for for quite some time, and then I landed my third job, which which was at a tavern. Uh, then I kind of dated for a little bit. But I didn't really. Her and I, her and I just kind of. We just fought a lot. I know that we just fought a lot, and like, you know, I still don't understand why we were fighting. I don't. But like I also know that I know this that you know, over the years, um, obviously I forgave this man that took advantage of me. Um, you know, because he reached out to my sister a few years, uh, probably a few years before my grandmother passed away. So I was like, yeah, you know, it happened, you know, stuff happens. You know, I forgave him completely, and that's okay. Um, but yeah, me and this girl just we just fought. Like I'd be fighting for her, and she'd be fighting against me. I was like, this isn't this isn't a relationship. We're just fighting at this point for no reason. And I was like, it just got it just got so it just got so depressing after a while. And it was like I just it just got old very quickly, and it got tiring very quickly. And this is where I started drinking. Yeah, I I was drinking and drinking. I was drinking all my problems, pretty much. I would I wouldn't get drunk right away in the morning, obviously, but it pretty much felt like it though, because the only thing that was getting me through the days were, you know, going to work, drinking at work, obviously off the clock. I would get hammered or at work, and I'd get hammered or get hammered at home, and you know, sleep it off or whatever the case was, and then probably by my I was there for at this third place for about three 3 years. So by my third year, I started culinary school. This is where culinary school begins. Okay, and you know, I landed a job cooking. I landed being a cooking line cook, well, not a good job because I lied, and I'll be honest, I did lie on my I did lie on my resume, but you know, obviously they found out very quickly I didn't have the experience that they needed, but they they didn't go and fire me, obviously, but right away anyway. But they were like, it was obvious that I didn't know what I was doing. So they put me on garmager, which is just salads and desserts, just so you guys know what that is. This was the fine dining place that I was working at for a while. I was there for a little bit. Obviously, by then I was probably fairly close to, my externships program course that I needed to obviously have a job and whatnot. And then comes to my last, well, I should say, my most recent employment. That I was working in a apartment complex, feeding kids breakfast, pretty much, and I did that for only a year. Might as well say a year. It was a little less than a year, but I just considered it a year because, I was there from June to May, and I was like, yeah, I was done with this place by the time the kitchen got closed up officially. Because I wasn't just cooking, I was also doing maintenance work and painting as well, and I am not a great painter at all. But anyways, went through my externships, both my externships through the apartment complex, obviously, putting in my hours and so on and so forth, and making sure I'm gonna actually pass, obviously. And I was it was all right. I can't complain. And then essentially, well, actually, no. Go back, rewind. It was about November of 20. I've been part of this church that I'm involved in, called Love Church, for about 4 years. It's gonna be 5. Yeah, gonna be 5. We're gonna be 5. I started about geez. I remember this day very well. I was watching a movie or something. I can't exactly remember what it was, but I was watching something on my computer or on TV, and I was just watching this video, and then I heard this voice, and it sounded like my grandfather's voice, and it was my name. By then, I already had the gaming channel going, because the gaming channel started in 2020. So I was about 2-3 years in. To my gaming channel when this happened. So the last day I drank was on my birthday, and I stopped drinking completely. And that was just as of last year. It's been well, actually, as of this year, it's been a full year since I stopped drinking. So you can tell that I stopped drinking. I was still drinking till about 2024. So it's been a whole year now. But for the first 4 years, going to be 5 years now, I've been a part of this church in November. It was about November. I heard this voice that sounded like my grandpa's voice just saying my name. That's all it was. And then I was scrolling on YouTube. Just scrolling. And the online pastor, Pastor Chatfield, his video popped up on my feed, and it was like a short. Obviously, it wasn't the full video, but it was a short. I forget what the video was, but it was just a video about God, and I kind of put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, okay, God, is this what you want? So I went through the steps of, joining their online community and, obviously, being part of their community and so on and so forth. And obviously, I graduated college, culinary school, obviously, this year in February. And this was something I asked God to help me with, to guide me with, to just help in general, because I didn't know what I was going to get into at all. And yeah, it's been since then. I stopped working at the tavern. I stopped working at the I don't even, well, I sometimes go to the tavern, but I don't go there as much as I used to. Because, I check on probably like one person, and that's about really it. I just like to see how she's doing, just to see if she's doing okay. Because she got injured when I was leaving, and I wanted to make sure she got her proper goodbye, because I felt bad, and she was like, I told her, I was like, hey, don't feel bad. I have to come in and talk to, say hi, say goodbye to you and a couple other people that I get to say goodbye to. So I went in there and one day, and I was like, hey, I know your leg was hurt, but I want you to know that I still care about you, and obviously she has a fiance, obviously, but you know, she had somebody that cared for her. And me and my girlfriend from middle school kind of like we talk here and there. Same thing with me and my fiance, ex-fiance, I should say. Her and I talk here and there, but it's not as much as we used to. Maybe more my ex from middle school than my ex-fiance, because me and my ex from middle school, we were talking about the past and stuff, and I I told I told her this, and I might have been a little bit harsh, because I was just like, she was like, I could tell she had regrets that I wasn't in her life anymore as her partner, and I I told her that the past is the past, and that what happened in the past is where it is, and there's nothing we can do about it now, and that she has two beautiful kids. they're 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 beautiful, man. And like I told her, I said, despite the fact that I check up on you and talk to you, your kids feel like my kids, but I know they're not my kids, because obviously they're not. They're somebody else's kid. And understand that, I don't want you living in regret for something that happened so long ago, because when you enter those gates, I don't want you or I being burdened by our regrets, and I might have been a little bit hard on her about that, because I kind of put it in a way of like, hey, it's time to move on. You need to get over it, you know? And that's kind of the tone that I used. Like, I feel bad, but it was also like, it was also me being like, hey, I don't want you living in this life regretting what could have been or what could have happened. I want you to live your life for your kids. I want you to live life for your kids, so they can understand and know how strong you are and how smart you are. Because she was a smart cookie. Like, she was way smarter than me. but it was like I've told her on multiple times that we have talked and had these deep conversations that we cannot go back in time and change what could have happened, or change the things that have happened, because regardless, they were either bound to happen or they weren't. And if they weren't, then I wouldn't be half the man I am today if it hadn't. And I told her that. I said, half of the things that have happened in my life recently happened not because the things that happened wasn't because I didn't care for you or I didn't love you. It was because somebody else was getting in the way and was jealous of our love, and essentially that was our downfall of our relationship. Was you had somebody in your life that was jealous of our relationship, and you know, at the end of the day, it might have not, it may or may not have happened, but it is what it is now, and we gotta live, just live with the fact that, you know, yeah, but what if this or what if that? But you know, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna live. I'm gonna live here in the present. You know, and like I said, I just felt bad having to put on that tone with her because you know she was sweet to me and she was kind to me. You know, during middle school and you know even when we were dating, you know, she was awesome. And now, and it's like now you're a mom. You gotta be on your A game, and you know, and I'm not saying that to bash her or anything like that, but I wanted what was best for her, and I didn't want her living in the past with regrets of stuff that happened in the past. I wanted her to live in the present with her kids and realize how how beautiful her kids are and how lucky uh, she is to have these kids and to have these things to bond with and care for and have a relationship with. You may not have a relationship with me, but you have a relationship with your kids. And that's what was more important. And I was trying to make that clear. Is that her kids are far more important of what happened. Her kids are far more important than what happened in the past, you know. And in no means am I being like bashing on the door, being like, no, no. Like, you know, it is what it is, and you know, do I still care about her? Of course I do. Of course I pray. Of course I think about her sometimes. You know, I wonder how she's doing. Uh, you know, we don't really talk anymore, but you know, uh, I, pr- I try to pray about her. I try to pray for her and her kids, make sure they're safe, and make sure that they're doing okay. And, you know, whatever relationship she has goes well, and whatever the case may be. And it's the same thing with my ex fiance. Last time I talked to her, she wanted me to follow her on TikTok. Okay? And I just told her straight up. I was like, you know, don't take this personally, but I'm not gonna follow. I'm not gonna follow you on TikTok, okay? I'm not gonna do that. Like, we're we're exes. Like, what? Well, like, I understand that you're trying to get like followers or subscribers or whatever TikTok does. I understand you're trying to do that and get views and all this other stuff, but you know, I I just I just don't want to follow you. You know, that's pretty much all I put. Is just I personally don't take this personally, but I don't want to follow you on TikTok. Not because I don't like you or anything, but it's just I don't use TikTok. I don't want to use TikTok, and I just think TikTok's just kind of one of those weird apps. You know, that's about really it. Then again, people could think the same thing about YouTube, and that's perfectly okay. Uh, and you know, uh, my journey with my belief in God has has grown so much since I started, and it's still growing, and it's still growing. It hasn't stopped at all. It hasn't, not one bit. And you know, I'm not here to tell you guys, you know, what to do with your lives, because I'm gonna tell you right now, your boy is a sinner just like everyone else. You know, I was a liar. Might as well call me a womanizer if you want. Uh, you know, and I had I still have lustful desires, but out of all those things, I'm not a drunken anymore. I'm not. I mean, I lie a little bit, but it's not to the extent I used to be. I used to lie a lot. I'm more honest than I am. I try to be more honest, but sometimes people don't like the honest answer. But I prefer to be honest as best. Key thing is to try and be honest. So I'm still working on that. Am I a womanizer? Uh, I don't think I am, but some people might, and that's okay. Because at the end of the day, Jesus is the one that's going to judge me. Okay? Jesus will be the one to judge me, and that's perfectly okay. I can live with that, because Jesus died for me on the cross, and he died for everyone, for all of our sins, and that's okay to have baggage with you, because it's not. Jesus can't work through you if you're trying to clean yourself up already, because here is what I'm trying to say. You are a sinner by default, okay? Let's say you give your life to Jesus. We'll say it like this, all right? You just said yes to Jesus, and I'm gonna go like this. You say yes every single day. It gets farther and farther apart. Okay, this is you now. This is the old you. Okay? Now, if you say no to Jesus, you're going to be like this forever. Because the further you say no to Jesus, same way. The farther you say no, you're separated from him. Okay? So when you say yes, the closer and closer you get to Jesus, where when you say no, you get further away. And that's what we call separation. You get literally separated from God, the very person that created you. It's not... It is, as it says in the Bible, that you will be sent to hell, for your sins if you do not say yes to Jesus. But what I am saying is that you cannot do the works, you cannot get Jesus by doing works or whatever your beliefs are. You cannot do it by just good works, because you have to do the good works with Jesus, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. Because, what I'm doing is for Love Church is I'm not only a chat host on their YouTube channel, I am also a co-leader for a Bible study as well. And day by day by day by day, by week by week by week, my relationship with Jesus gets stronger, and it reminds me to stay strong every single day. I literally have a verse that I stand by and literally read every single day. This one. And just so you guys are aware what it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Corinthians chapter 4, verse 13. I see that every single day. And it's a reminder to me of how strong Jesus really is. Because Jesus was there when I was going through all those breakups. Jesus was there when I had cancer. Jesus was there when I lost my grandparents. Jesus was there. Jesus was there, and I didn't even know it. Jesus literally proved it to me by that plaque that's on my bed, by my desk, by my dresser there. That's my associate's degree back there. That was the one thing left that Jesus did for me, and he's still doing things for me. I have a online family that cares about me, that loves me, and cares about the things that I do. They're even subscribed to this channel, so they're gonna know exactly who I'm talking about. And I'm just honest to God. I do not regret saying my yes to Jesus. I do not regret it one bit. I would say yes, yes, yes. Now, now, do I get in my flesh like every other Christian? Yes, I do. Do and do I repent? I do. And it's okay because at the end of the day, I know who's got my back. And it's Jesus, man. It's Jesus. And it's just one of those things where it's like I can't I can't explain everything, but understand this. God has made me in a way that is so special and unique, just like everybody else. We all have certain talents, we all have certain abilities, we all have ways to talk to people. We all do. And when I was working at the apartment complex, God was giving me patience, God was giving me wisdom, God was giving me everything I needed. Or I should say is giving what I should say what yeah it well he still is, but then what still is to this day, but was when I was working there. To make sense of that. Sorry for that confusion. But understand this, guys. I'm not here to bash you for whatever sin that you have or what sin you have done. I'm not, because I'm a sinner just like you. And you know, when people ask me about my walk with God, I tell them this story all the time. Because it's a story that needed to be heard, that needed to be said. Because, being a special needs kid growing up to, you didn't, you were practically treated very, very poorly. Very poorly. Okay? And it was bad, okay? As the years went by, it got better. I can say that. And most of the people that used to bully me or don't even know I still exist, those were people that I forgave. I forgave those people. I forgave the things that happened to me. I forgave a lot of things. And I went from being an angry person, I went from being a very angry person at the world and at myself to being much calmer, much more understanding, much more wisdom and knowledge, and maybe some power. Not like superpowers or anything, but power in a good way. That I can use for the kingdom. And I've been wanting to do this for a while, so now you guys know why I've been wanting to do this for a while. And I want you guys to understand that, you know, my faith will never change. It won't. I won't say no to Jesus. I won't. And, you know, whatever happens, happens. And I just know this, that Jesus is going to be coming. Like, I just feel it in my bones. I don't know why. I just do. I feel like he's going to come. And any minute now. And you know, I think you guys all have been my good friends and family, and I hope you guys don't take this as me being like throwing my beliefs at you. I want you to understand that regardless of my beliefs, I still love you. I care about you. And it's not about me. Okay? It's not. It's about me reaching out to you to get you to think about bringing your life to Jesus. Okay? I'm just the guy dropping that little seed. Okay? And I'm letting somebody else water it. And I want you guys to understand, regardless whether you don't like this video or not, I love you. And I care about you. And I want you to know that regardless of whatever may happen, I will still love you, care for you, support you in whatever way I can. Because that is what Jesus wants me to do. Because it's my job. It's my job to get you to say yes. Okay? You don't have to say yes. You don't have to. I'm just saying. Okay? I would like you to say yes, but you don't have to. And that's perfectly okay if you don't. Because God's got some plan for you, regardless whether you think it or not. Because I know I surely didn't. I didn't think God would get me this apartment. I didn't think God was going to get me that associate's degree. I didn't think I was going to make it. I really didn't. There was times where I felt like I was gonna give up and crash and burn, you know. But I didn't give up. I kept on going. I believed in Jesus. If I had struggles, I obviously asked my teachers, obviously, amongst asking God too, and Jesus, and just being like, all right, Lord, just let me figure this out, or help me figure this out, or guide me to figure this out in a way that'll let me pass. You know, this was proof is in the pudding. You know, I don't need a big, lascious house, you know. I would like that, but let's be honest, guys. I don't need it. I don't want it. I would like it, but I just wouldn't enjoy that as much as this apartment. Because this apartment here has been awesome. Like, I get to go to work every day, get to come home and sleep, and I don't have to worry about noisy neighbors, whatever the case is. That's all Jesus, too. Regardless whether they whether they believe in Jesus or not, they are a blessing to me, and I am a blessing to them, regardless what they think. And it's the same thing for you guys. Regardless of how you may feel, I am a blessing to you guys, and you guys are a blessing to me. And that is the truth. And, being the youngest out of 3 sisters, because I have 3 sisters, I am the only male out of the 3, okay? It is my job as the male to get them ready for the kingdom, to get them to understand what Jesus is about, because Jesus isn't about, anger, wrath. Yes, he is those things. I will say that. Yes, he is those things, but he is also loving, and he is also loving, kind. He's merciful. The whole, rah, God's gonna come and just, destroy us all. That's not God. Okay? That's the other guy, okay? That's the other guy. God wants to have you with him in heaven, okay? He wants you there. He wants everyone there. Not everyone's gonna go, because everyone's gonna want to go the other way, which is with the other guy, which is Satan. And Satan is the one that wants to destroy us. He wants to separate us from God, to destroy the very thing God created, which is us. He wants to destroy us. God doesn't want to destroy us. Yes, he did those things. Yes, he flooded. Yes, he flooded the earth. He did that. Yeah, he did it. He did it. He did. But he didn't do it because let's just kill everyone. No, he didn't do that. Just kill everyone for funsies, okay? He did it to wash away the sin, wash away the sin, to start over, to give anew, because not every human when Noah was around was considered clean, as they would say, clean. But I don't know if that's a fact or not. But not everybody made it. Okay. Anyways, that's all I'm gonna get into today. I hope this helps you kind of understand my walk a little bit, and also understand where I am in my walk. And thanks everybody, and God bless, and see you around.